Forgot that. I had the headphones on. Alright, what's up guys? It's Cooper C&T Designs again, and we're getting into some other bills. Let me do my usual screen share here. Drop that out of the way. Yeah, we're doing the 1560. Alright, so this is 1560. To establish a federal agency or a federal advisory council to support the victims of gun violence. And look at how many people are signed on to this bill. Now, if I can reach my stuff over here, pull out the plasma cut of the day, which is the Bla Bla Bla. Now that I'm getting all the plasma cuts hung up on the wall back there, that will go up on the wall shortly. Hopefully my house holds up everything I'm going to have to do. Okay, so let's run through this, because this is the two bills I'm going to cover first, and these two videos are basically, it's a whole lot of talk, and that's all it is. It's just these politicians want to absolutely run their mouths to put more stuff on paper about gun violence instead of blaming actual criminals for what happens with firearms. Oh God, I forgot to go through who put this in and when it was done. Alright, so this was done March 3rd, and I know I'm kind of bouncing back and forth in a couple of these. Mr. Evans is one, I guess, who actually put this bill in at first, and then all these other people are all the co-signers for the bill. And it's a lot of the usual names. Beatty, Byer, Rochester Brown, Kirkpatrick, Lawrence, Miss Lee of California. It's all Mr. Neguse. It's all of them. Let's see. Let's get into this. So, short title: Act may be cited as the Resources for Victims of Gun Violence Act of 2021. Now, it's introduced in 2021. All right, and here we go again with a bunch of numbers that they don't break down, with a bunch of emotional arguments. Again, in the United States, more than 100 individuals are killed with guns every day, totaling nearly 40,000 individuals who die from gun violence every year. I'm going to try to make it through part of this video. But you guys all know the stats. I mean, 3/4 of this is suicides. That's a sad fact. We have a problem, especially among men. Women too, but especially among men, especially younger men these days, of suicide. And that's an issue you can't handle with some bill for guns, because these guys are serious. It's not something you're going to solve with some victim gun violence. Alright, let's see. Additionally, more than 230 individuals sustain non-fatal gun injury every day. Shouldn't that be injuries? We are talking about multiple people. According to a recent national poll, an estimated 10 million individuals in the United States have been shot and injured in their lifetimes. Well, if we start from someone who was born, 80-something years ago until now, yeah, you could stack those numbers deep. But we also know where those are happening. We know the majority of why those things are happening. We know the cultural influences behind it, and that's not color. It has nothing to do with color. It has everything to do with a culture. A culture that would rather go to a gun than be insulted or be dissed. They think that, they can't let something slide. It's like me bumping into a guy in the store yesterday. I just backed up when he was walking right behind me. I didn't notice him at first. I knew someone moved. I just didn't realize they were walking directly behind me. We bumped into each other. You know, we both turned around. Hey, man, sorry, both. Yeah, hey, no problem, man. Um, in some places, that's enough to go to blows, and that's enough to pull guns. There's an issue with some souls in the United States, not with guns. All right, in that same poll, approximately 58% of the adults in the United States reported that they or someone they care for have experienced a form of gun violence, including a gun suicide, which is not gun violence, kids, which there's no such thing as gun violence in the first place, a gun homicide, domestic violence involving a gun, and that's a wide category for these people because they will simply say there was a domestic violence situation and there was a gun in the home. Therefore, it was domestic violence involving a gun, even though the gun never made an appearance. You gotta know the way they think. Or an unintentional shooting, aka what we that actually know what the hell we're talking about, we call negligent discharges. Because a person knowingly has a firearm, does something where they break a rule of firearm safety, and they get shot. Do I know people who have been killed by firearms? Yeah. A young man, when I was going to church, he got shot just going to his damn mailbox to check the mail. Shot in the lower leg, bled out. He actually made it to the hospital, but he had bled so much that the body just couldn't recover. My dad was robbed at gunpoint. 5 o'clock in the morning, going to the store to get a pack of smokes and a cup of coffee on the way to work. Not looking to hurt a single soul. Do I blame the gun? Nope. Do I blame the sumbitch behind it? Oh, I absolutely do. Let's see. Nearly 2/3 of gun-related deaths in the United States are suicides. Yes. So why are you counting them as gun violence? Most individuals who attempt suicide do not die unless they use a gun. Yes, a gun is a very permanent way to get it done. What they don't say is that in other countries where they don't have guns, like a place like Japan, is that, yeah, they commit suicide anyway, and they have a higher suicide rate than us. 90% of gun suicide attempts end in death. I figured the number would be higher than that. But who's counting? Whereas 4% of suicide attempts not involving a firearm result in death. They're seriously playing with that number too. And what you have to look at in a lot of these cases where they're talking about attempted suicide is someone's not actually attempting suicide. They are attempting to do themselves harm, without a doubt, but they are not attempting suicide. Okay, la-da-da-da. Okay, number 5. It is particularly concerning for veterans, children, and teenagers. Veterans are 1.5 times more likely than non-veterans to die by suicide, and in 2017, 69% of veteran suicides were by gun. So you're telling me effectively 30% of them, which, if I'm not mistaken, that's more than, what did they give up here, 4%? So you're telling me effectively 30% of them managed to commit suicide without a gun. Who's playing with the numbers here? Veteran suicides were by a gun. Among children and teenagers, the rate of gun suicide has increased 59% over the past 10 years. Well, what the hell have we been doing to our kids for the past 10 freaking years that has brought the suicide rate up for our children that high? Social media, making the world all about them, pushing the lie on them that things are supposed to be fair and not explaining to them there are situations in life you are going to reach that are not going to be fair to you whatsoever. Adversity is something you will have to deal with. We've taken that away from our kids. We've effectively tried to bubble wrap them. And that shit just doesn't work. We've done more to damage our kids in the last 30 years. And it's all leftist policies. And the more they push the leftist policies, the worse this is going to get. An estimated 40 million adults in the United States report someone they cared for had attempted or died by suicide with a gun. You realize multiple people can know the same person, right? When it comes to veteran suicides, for every veteran that actually commits suicide, which is a horrible thing, and it breaks my heart. And I know guys, I work with a lot of vets. I know guys that have been real damn close. But multiple people know that person. That's another number that they inflate here. And one of these days, I'll get into some more stuff about vets. There's another bill that I'm going to cover that mentions them specifically for stuff like this. Damn, I got some people going live I want to watch, so I'm going to speed some stuff up. Let's see. More than 1/3 of gun-related deaths in the United States are homicides. Funny, 40,000 deaths you guys try to claim are all violent gun deaths, and then we come down here and you admit again that it's 1/3 that number. So we're roughly 14 to about 20,000 per year with a country that has well over 400 million firearms. Cheeseburgers kill more people every year. Yep. All right. More than 600 mass shootings defined in which 4 or more individuals were shot and killed or injured took place in the United States in 2020. And more than 2,600 mass shootings have taken place since the shooting at Sandy Hook School in Newtown, Connecticut. And where do the vast majority of these so-called mass shootings happen? It isn't the school shooting that unfortunately we have because we fucking refuse to actually protect our children, and we refuse to deal with people who have mental illness that are in schools. A lot of this is involved in inner city gun violence. Some of it is like it was a bar somewhere in California the other night. Big fight broke up in the bar. Dude apparently, I think he got choke slammed on a pool table. When he came up blasting. All right. Firearms are the leading cause of death for children and teenagers. Bullshit. When they do this, watch what they're doing right here. When they talk about children and teenagers, they're talking about a lot of kids, and believe it or not, there's trigger pullers from a very young age in a lot of neighborhoods that are 10, 11 years old when they're pulling triggers out gangbanging, all the way to like 21 is what they're considering children and teenagers in these stats. It's not children just finding guns and having, a horrible result. These people are lying, and a very large part of America does not actually do any research. They don't look at this. They see the numbers, they see names like Sandy Hook in there, and they picture all these small children getting shot up by some guy with a so-called assault weapon. They do a very good job of controlling narratives. Nancy Pelosi has said it many, many times. Basically, when you control a perception, you control people's reality, and this is all about perception. Firearms are the leading cause of death for children. Okay, I already read that. Let's see. Each year, approximately 15,600 children and teenagers are shot and injured. You realize how many actual children, innocent children, die in drowning accidents in homes, in tubs, in toilets, in buckets, in swimming pools every single year? It's way more than that. All right. Black children and teenagers are 14 times more likely than their white peers to die by gun homicide. I wonder why that is. We already know the answer to this. It's already there. During an average year in the United States, more than 600 women are shot to death by an intimate partner, And many more women are shot and injured by an intimate partner, and many more children are shot and injured by an intimate partner. Nearly 1 million women in the United States who are alive today have been shot. Boy, they playing fast and hard with some numbers here, kids. Shot or shot at by an intimate partner, and approximately 4,500,000 women in the United States today have been threatened with a gun by an intimate partner. Oh my God, these people are. Again, looking at the numbers on intimate partner, what they're calling intimate partner, they're conflating everything from a one night stand serial killer to two crack addicts living in the same house. You can look at things to the American Psychological Association, which I don't trust. They're a very leftist organization, but they actually do breakdowns on stuff like this. More than 10,300 violent hate crimes committed in the United States in an average year involve a gun, or more than 28 each day. The vast majority of hate crimes are directed against communities of color, religious minorities, and individuals in the LGBTQ community. Again, they're full of shit. Are there some shootings going on in areas like that? Yeah. But much like that jackass who shot up the massage parlor in Atlanta, 2 years ago now? They try to say that was racism. The dude had a serious sex addiction, and he just blamed the women there for giving him what he wanted. That's why he did the shooting. Had jack shit to do with race. They will assign race to anything. And a lot of times what they don't tell you is some of these things are actually not white people shooting other people that ain't white, but they're not going to say the color of them. If it was white people, they're going to say it. In 2020, communities and cities across the United States experienced an increase in gun violence, gun homicides, as the country struggled with the economic and social uncertainty caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. My big old butt. That crap had been ramping up since early in 2018. The defund the police movement, all the Black Lives Matter riots, all the Antifa riots, the jackasses who shut down the street after Rayshard Brooks was killed and shot up a woman's car, killing her little girl because she dared go around their little roadblock in Atlanta. As far as I know, they still haven't caught those guys. Black woman, black little girl, I think she was 8 years old, beautiful little girl. Shot by a bunch of... I'm going to try to behave. Shot by a bunch of people that shouldn't even be around to draw a breath. Let's see, from March 2020 through November 2020, an estimated 17 million guns were sold, 81% increase over the same period in 2019, unprecedented surge in gun sales put children, victims of domestic abuse, and communities of color at even greater risk of gun violence. Bullshit. There is no statistic that shows that the rise in sales of legal firearms had any correlation to the rise in crime. There's nothing there. You could take those sales completely out of the way, and that crime rate and those rate of shootings was still rising at the same level. You could wipe those guns off the map. That shit was still happening. It's got nothing to do with people purchasing guns. A lot of those people purchased guns because the rate of crime was going up. Someone reading this who didn't actually do a little bit of research would be horrified. I'm horrified because people would believe this crap and not do their own research. They're sheep. Alright, let's go through this. I might, because we still got to get into the body of the bill. Alright, The individuals who survive gun violence every year in the United States face lifelong process, physical and emotional healing. Yeah, they do. Heavy economic costs faced by those survivors, their families, communities, and society as a whole. Furthermore, victims of gun violence are often unaware of or have trouble accessing many available resources that could help them in their recovery. Um, Not just for people who survive traumatic events like I don't know, being shot at, and things like that. Um, we do need to do a lot better with the mental health in the United States. But all that research is already there. Every bit of it, decades worth of it. And you'll see when we get down into this, they just want to throw millions of dollars at a problem. We already have all of the parts of this problem, and we know where an answer lies. There were a lot of different answers, actually. Victims of gun violence experience persistent mental health problems, including post traumatic stress, depression, self harm, anxiety, and substance abuse. National Center for PTSD, the Department of Veterans Affairs, estimates 28% of individuals who witness a mass shooting develop PTSD, and about 1/3 of those individuals develop acute stress disorder. Victims of gun violence suffer from increased rates of unemployment, and younger victims of gun violence are more likely to have lower grades and more absences from school. A lot of this, and especially when you're talking about school age children, if we throw this into different buckets, which it should be put in different buckets, okay? Young children at school who suffer a mass shooting where another student comes in or some deranged SOB comes in and starts just blasting away, those children are absolutely going to be scarred for the rest of their lives. They are going to need psychological counseling because that hit them at an age where their coping mechanisms haven't developed all the way. Even older children. Now, young children in a lot of ways are going to be more resilient than older people, but again, we have research from school shootings before that tells us a lot of this. Why do we need all this counsel and everything else? What we need is the mental health counseling for the children. We need serious investment in the mental health system in the United States. But a lot of this could be solved if they would do things that people have talked about forever, like hardening schools. It's going to cost money, but it's going to save a hell of a lot of lives, and it won't take away people's rights. All right. Young people who survive gun related incidents are also at risk of experiencing gun violence again in the future. Yes, because a lot of these people that they're mentioning in this are young kids who are in inner cities who are out gang banging, selling dope, and everything else. They're lumping everything in. They don't break this down into its components so that people can get the actual picture of what's happening. One study estimated that nearly 1/4 of individuals who survive a gun shooting at age 24 or younger will be shot again within the next 10 years. I wonder who that group of people is. I wonder. Bloods, Crips, 18th Street gangs, folk, list them off. We know who they are. All right. Given the immense physical and emotional toll of gun violence on victims, Congress must do more. Yeah, you need to get the out of the way is what you need to do. to ensure the victims of gun violence have access to the resources they need to recover from their trauma, especially for victims experiencing common, everyday gun violence in racially segregated neighborhoods with high rates of poverty and chronic disinvestment. You want to know why the chronic disinvestment's there? You when you take a neighborhood and you let it devolve into a war zone, businesses don't want to be there. So businesses leave, which leads to less jobs in an area, which leads to more unemployment, which leads more people relying on a narco economy where they feel like they have to be there in that economy to be able to make money. And they will protect their business with guns, driving up the violence. And then you have neighborhoods of people who are flat out terrified of these assholes and will not testify to them. My wife was just on a jury. She was the only one out of 11 people that said there was not enough evidence to convict a guy. And from what she told me afterwards, there was no evidence. No shell casings, no projectiles. Apparently he was shooting full metal jackets. Everything went through him. 7 rounds. Now, 7 rounds is not typical for a revolver, so I'm betting more semi-automatic. And I told my wife the reason they didn't find any shell casings is because people picked them up. Because they don't want the evidence there. They don't want the police to be able to investigate. She actually asked the DA after that about that very thing. And the DA told her, yes, it happens all the time. I also told my wife within seconds of that shooting happening, there were phones going off around that neighborhood, and they knew exactly who did that shooting. But they won't speak up. They had a couple eyewitnesses that were completely unreliable. No physical evidence. No motive. Plenty of reasonable doubt. I told my wife, I'm proud of you. Because if there is not enough evidence there to convince you beyond all doubt the dude was guilty, then basically innocent is the only way that you can actually come to the conclusion, or that's the only conclusion you can come to. And then they find her, I think the DA got more evidence the morning that deliberations were over. But people in the neighborhood knew exactly who did that shooting. They knew exactly why he did that shooting. And they picked up those shell casings because they don't want that stuff coming down. They don't want the police there. So yeah, your neighborhood is going to be a war zone. If you leave violent people in your neighborhood, you continue to protect violent people in your neighborhood, guess what you're going to end up with? More violent people. And violence breeds more violence. Children who grow up in violent situations typically become more violent. That's why typically someone who is abusive, an abusive parent to a child was more than likely abuse themselves. Alright, I know this one's a bummer, guys, but just follow me down the rabbit trail. You guys just got to see this. Alright, now, this is where we get into all of the BS that they're going to throw at a problem that we already have the answers to. We already have all the data. We have decades upon decades of data. We have decades upon decades of actual hard numbers and research. And we have solutions to it. They just won't do them. Alright, so appropriate committees. The term appropriate committees means the following. These are all the different committees. The Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions of the Senate. The Committee on the Judiciary of the Senate. The Committee on Education, Labor of the House of Representatives. Committee on Energy and Commerce of the House of Representatives. Committee on the Judiciary of the House of Representatives. Any other relevant committee of the Senate of the House of Representatives with jurisdiction over matters affecting victims of gun violence. These people want to put in thousands of pages of BS that will do nothing to solve the problem. And that's always their thing. They're going to make recommendations for new laws, to push through new laws, to push through new restrictions. That's the only answers they're going to come up with. They'll do nothing to solve the problems. All right, gun violence. The term gun violence means suicide, homicide, domestic violence, hate crimes, youth violence, mass shootings, unintentional shootings, non-fatal shootings, threats or exposures to violent acts involving firearms. If you sneeze, that's gun violence. Just so you know, I just committed gun violence on every one of you son bitches watching this. I brandished a firearm. So y'all can go call some hotlines and try to get some help now. And for some of you that I know are watching this, there is no help for you guys. I know you personally. You put up with me. That proves there's no help for you. All right, victims assistance professional. Medical professional, including an emergency medical professional. A social worker. A provider of long-term services or care, and a victim advocate. It's word salad. It's blah, 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 blah. I don't have enough steel to cut the blahs that go into this. Victim of gun violence, term victim of gun violence, individual. I thought we just went over that. Individual who's been wounded as a result of guns, individual threatened with a gun, individual witnessed a gun, relative, classmate, co-worker, second friend's, cousin's, uncle's, third sister's, roommate's, boyfriend, relative, classmate, co-worker, or other associate of. An individual who has been killed as a result of gun violence, well, obviously, he's murdered with a gun. He's toast. Individual described in subparagraph A or B. Oh, make it stop. These people actually put time into this. They don't put any brain cells into it. They don't put any research into it. But they put a whole lot of time. I bet you them fucking crowns was flying around their coloring books on this one. All right, advisory council to support victims of gun violence. There's established an advisory council to support victims of gun violence. These are the people who are going to blah blah. Membership. In general, advisory council shall be composed of the following members: Secretary of Health and Human Services, the Attorney General, Secretary of Education, Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Commissioner on Social Security Administration. Okay, like he's got anything to do with guns. The Assistant Secretary for Mental Health and Substance Use, Director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. That's where they want to push more of this through emergency health care or health issues and stuff, so they can get around actually having to make laws. Director of National Institute of Health. The Administrator of the Administration for Community Living. You guys realize these are all paid agencies with paid government employees. Director of the Office of Violence Against Women. Director of the Office of for Victims of Gun Crime. So we already have an office for victims of gun crime. Are you guys getting sick of federal agencies yet? The chairman of the Board of Legal Services Corporation. All right. As appropriate, the head of any federal department agency identified by the Secretary of Health and Human Services having responsibilities or administering programs relating to issues affecting gun violence. Holy good God. Basically, any agency in the federal government that ever even had a heartbeat can be involved in this, and they will get more money sucked to them. There's a giant toilet flushing in the background with an unbelievably big turd in it. Just thinking about this bill, what it is. Additional members. So not just everybody up there. No, no, no. Load that little yellow bus up with some more people. In addition, members described in paragraph 1, the advisory council shall be composed of the following: not fewer than 2, not more than 5 victims of gun violence. Appointed by the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Yeah, wonder how many people that are actually pro-gun and firearms rights and individual rights they're going to have on any of these. Not fewer than 2, not more than 5 victims of gun violence. Yeah, okay. Not fewer than 2, not more than 5 victim assistant professionals. The lead agency, the Department of Health and Human Services, shall be the lead agency for the advisory council. Ah, Jesus. Boy, these people love to write. Just, it's word salad. Just, all right. The advisory council shall survey victims of gun violence, victims' assistance professionals about their needs in order to inform consent. We already know that. Conduct a literature review and assess past or ongoing programs designed to assist victims of gun violence or individuals with similar needs to determine. We already know the answers, kids. The effectiveness of the program. Best and promising practices for assisting victims of gun violence, and assesses the administration of compensation funds established after mass shootings to determine best and promising practices to direct victims of gun violence to sources of funding. Where do you think they are going to get compensation funds? They want to be able to sue the gun manufacturer. Sorry, I keep answering questions. Information. In general, the advisory council shall identify, promote, coordinate, disseminate to the public information, resources, and best and promising practices available to help victims of gun violence meet their needs financially, educationally, workplace, housing, transportation, assistance, technology, and accessibility. Come on. All right. Maintain their mental health and emotional well-being. Seek legal redress for their injuries and protection against any ongoing threats to their safety. Again, we're getting into suing the gun companies on that line. Protection against ongoing threats to their safety. How about we lock up the violent people who are committing the shootings? That would be great for protecting people. Access to government programs, services, and benefits for which they may be eligible or which they may be entitled. That word sticks dead in my throat, entitled. So let me get this straight. We got Corn Pop. Corn Pop's a bad dude. Corn Pop likes to gangbang. Corn Pop likes to go try to shoot people. However, Corn Pop has a bad day one day, and Corn Pop catches 357 rounds to the chest. Now Corn Pop can get on all these other programs for assistance because he was a victim of gun violence. The advisory council shall include in the information disseminated under subparagraph A the website's telephone contact information for helplines of relevant federal agencies, state agencies, and nonprofit organizations. Again, they're just going to start throwing money. Hadn't done shit for our schools. The advisory council shall make the information described in subparagraph A and B available online, public website, submitting a hard copy. submitting a hard copy and making available additional hard copies to each member of Congress, each field office, Social Security Administration, each state agency that is responsible for administrating health and human services for the dissemination of medical facilities, each state agency responsible for administrating education programs for disseminating schools, the office of each state attorney general for dissemination to local prosecutor's office. That's billions in printing, effectively rough and tough John Wayne toilet paper, because it won't take shit off anybody. But all it's useful for is toilet paper. Report not later than 180 days after the enactment of this, the advisory council shall prepare a report, includes best practices, identifies any groups and items described in Clause I. If applicable, identifies any additional federal or state legislative authority necessary to implement the activities described in I or address the gaps described in Clause II. More legislation, baby. The appropriate committees, each state agency that is responsible for administrating health and human services, each state agency education programs, the office of each state attorney general, make the report prepared under subparagraph A available to the public online as an accessible format. Follow-up report, not less than 2 years. They've got to come back and do a follow-up report, because all they are is doing reporting. And you're going to get some serious A+ CNN style coverage of this crap as always. Make the following report described in subparagraph A available to the public. Public input. The advisory council shall establish and process to collect public input, form the development of and provide updates to best and promising practices, resources, and other information described in subparagraph 2, including by conducting outreach to entities and individuals described in subparagraph B of this paragraph that have a range of expertise of gun violence described in section. Jesus. You should really, I should really have to take stuff to do this. Include representations from communities disproportionately affected by gun violence, entities and individuals described in subparagraph, state and local, victims of gun violence, victims assistance professionals, nature of outreach, blah, blah, blah. Oh, good Lord. There's no wonder the plasma cut that I immediately thought of when I looked at this bill was blah, blah, blah. All right, guys. I'm out on this one. I'm going to take a break, and then I'm going to film the next one. So, y'all be cool. Hope you like the plasma cuts in the background. There is going to be tons more, because blah, blah, blah is going up, and then the next one's going up. My wife's probably going to kill me. So, all right. Let me get out of here and take care of this. You guys be cool.